Now we're excited to be back, and you would think by now we would be really good at like planning out how to get the live stream up and running, getting all this stuff started. We actually moved the live back half an hour, and to no avail. Like we were still rushing, trying to get things set up and things going. But I'm really excited to be back and see you guys here. Now we had a week off of uploading recorded video, so any of our training videos. And that's the first time we've done that in almost 2 years.
That's crazy.
So I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss a moment to hang out with you guys. So I wanted to make sure that our live happened tonight. Now I see some I'm excited to see all the people back in the chat. I see Becky Parker.
Look at all those familiar faces.
I know. Happy New Year.
Everybody's a familiar face.
Yeah, SD Cruiser. Finally glad to see you all back. Well, it's nice to have you back on the stream. Melissa Salt, Happy New Year. I love seeing the trains. Oh, no. Oh, now we've done a little reorganizing around here.
Ken doesn't know where anything is because I cleaned.
I was a little bit worried, but worry no more because I found the train whistle. I was worried about that for a second.
Lucky Rod's
So
upstairs.
today we are going to talk about some New Year's resolutions for your dog training, and I'm not sure where I put the notes. Where do you see? Oh, they're just there on the table. Okay. This is something we're not huge. I mean, I'm not a huge advocate for, specifically training for the new year or like making resolutions for the new year.
I am. I'm the opposite.
Right, but what's really important is that
I like goals.
These specific events are a great time to commit to something, commit to training, commit to whatever the thing is. And if you're new here, I want you to type new in the comments so we can get to know you guys and learn who you are. But if this is your first time here, my name is Ken Steepe. This is Kayl McCann. We're professional dog trainers at McCann Dogs, where we get to help over 500 dogs every single week at our training facility with our amazing staff. And this channel is all about helping you to have a well-behaved four-legged family member. So today's topic is going to be all about how to set a New Year's resolution, and we're going to help you in today's live stream to figure out how you can have a well-behaved four-legged family member. On that note, I'm Ken Steepe.
I'm Kayl.
Welcome back to McCann Dogs. I've also created this cool stinger, and you'll see I'm going to try to use it as much as I can.
Stinger?
It's this thing that'll sort of bounces back and forth between the scenes.
Aren't they called tickers?
And it's a stinger. So you just check this out. If you guys want, let's jump into the train station. In fact, let's just pretend. We're just going to make believe that we're headed over to the train station. I'll do this. And then I'll throw us to camera 2.
Oh,
what do you guys think? That's pretty neat, eh?
That is kind of cool.
I'm overheaded to camera 2. So I see lots of people in the chat asking tons of great questions. So let's talk about our question.
Okay,
yeah, I think it'll work. Our question for the day. And our question for the day, what are your training goals this year?
What are your training goals this year? Why don't you start us off?
Sure. I mean, I'd like to do a few more competitions with Mac in herding. I think that would be really fun. I mean, specifically that I'd like to get him to a point where we're shedding sheep in competition. Mm-hmm. That'd be really cool. I mean, shedding just means that we're splitting. We're like taking a handful of sheep or maybe 4 sheep away from the group. We're splitting them.
You have to separate them. Well, the dog has to separate them.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think that Beeline will progress enough in 1 year to be able to do like a novice competition?
Oh, for sure.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
that's a cool goal.
Yeah.
Beeline is our youngest border collie, and Mac is our oldest border collie.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're both. I'm training Beeline in sheep herding, sheep herding right now. Mac is a started dog. If you've seen any of the videos on our channel, he came to me as an open level dog, which is like, he knew what he was doing,
really
so that he could help me to learn how to do sheep herding, and he's taught me a lot. I just want to check out the chat. There's lots going on here.
So Ken and I are professional dog trainers, and every week we work with people to help train their family pet. And we have 7 of our own dogs that we have as our family members, but we also do some extra things with them as well. Since they have great training, we have sort of extracurricular sports that we like to play in. Ken does sheep herding with his dogs and a little bit of agility, and I do a lot of other things as well, but my main focus is agility competition and coaching. So that's sort of what we do for fun with our dogs, aside from like hiking and all like the normal normal doggy fun things. But so most of our goals will probably be directed towards the sports that we play.
Yeah.
Although my additional goal for my dogs is to focus on their health this year, is to focus on like keeping them in good shape and like keeping them healthy and fit. Ready. Yeah, so that they just live a long time and that they feel good, and that's my other goal for the year.
Those are all good goals. So I see some really
look at all these good goals.
Yeah, some really great goals in the chat. I wanted to mention really quickly. I see there's a couple new people here. Which I like that as a username.
Easy to remember.
Is new to the chat. Aaron, new here. So excited. Happy New Year from Finland.
Oh, Finland. Very
cool.
I love Finland. I've been so many times.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Finland is like literally so much like Canada. If you have ever been to Canada, I would love to know your opinion. I went to Finland and I felt like I was at home. It was amazing. I absolutely love it there. I have so many wonderful friends there.
Okay, tons of great. We're gonna get back to some of these goals. I love it. We have some really, really cool goals in the chat. Now let's talk a little bit about, as we mentioned earlier. Although we're not super committed, I'm not super committed to like coming up with some New Year's resolution. I think this is a great opportunity to mark a point in time, set a goal, and then it's all about transformation and sort of realizing that's what somebody might need to go out, so realizing that you have some things that you'd like to work on, and New Year's can be a great time for that, any time of year, but New Year's especially, because it's sort of how people are thinking. They're wondering how do I want to make my life better? How do I want to make my life better with my four-legged family member? And one thing we know that our online students, our My Dog Can students, love is their training journal. We make them a McCann Dogs training journal. They get to document, they get to set goals, they get to record what training they're doing. And I know that's such a powerful thing. And if, in any aspect of life, it doesn't just have to be with your dog training. There might be things that you record or you write down. You think, by February, I want to have this thing done. And we know that, what gets measured, or what gets recorded gets better. We can really focus on these things. So what I want you to do, and you don't need our online training journal to do this, but write down in some book or a piece of paper what that goal is. Put it on the fridge, or have it somewhere that you're going to see quite often. I know in our office, I've got this little whiteboard beside the editing section, and I'll put goals on there. I'll put things that I want, because I want to see it all the time and I want to be reminded about it. So as abstract an idea is getting, having a dog who listens, or having your dog to be more well behaved is, I want you to document one thing that you want to focus on as the year progresses, or maybe you can put an end date on it. That would be really great, to sort of come up with an idea. I want to teach my dog to do this behavior, and set a goal, set that end date for it. I think that can be really, really helpful. Maybe your training goals are something, a behavior. Maybe your training goals are time related. Maybe you want to, spend some time, 15 minutes twice a day with your dog, working on something, maybe teaching them a trick. Maybe it is doing dog agility. Maybe just spending
more quality time with them versus just getting caught up in like everyday busy life and, putting them outside in the backyard while you go in the house and do something, versus like going outside and spending 5 minutes like throwing a ball for them or something, because those 5 minutes are like pretty big deal in your dog's mind, even though it doesn't really take much time for you. For your dog, that's like a good 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I like the idea that you picked 5 minutes, because a lot of people think, well, I'll wait till I have dinner, and then I'll spend an hour working on my dog obedience, or I'll spend an hour working on this thing.
Yeah, we don't always have that much time.
We don't, and it gets...
And it's intimidating and overwhelming. So if you think, oh my gosh, I have to spend all of this time, sometimes it can be overwhelming and like a little bit... discouraging, because you think you have this big commitment to do. But if you just do like little bits here and there, it's way easier to achieve, and it's more rewarding, because it's easy to do every single day.
Absolutely, for sure. And our focus with all of our methodologies, all the things that we do to train our dogs, we focus on the dog's attitude. We really want our dogs to be having fun, and we want you training at home to be having fun too, because you're going to do it more often. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to want to be spending more time doing it. You know, focusing on your attitude and your dog's attitude is so key. And a great way to do that is by breaking those up into short little training sessions. Let's talk for a second about what we do when we have a puppy at home, how we break up those training sessions.
Absolutely. So when we bring a new puppy into the house, we often will have short little training sessions many times throughout the day. And typically we have, you know, a house full of dogs, not literally, but we do have many dogs, and we feel really strongly that it's important that every time we bring a new puppy into the house that we spend the same amount of time individually with that dog that we did all of the other dogs. You know, our first dog only being one dog, obviously they got all the attention, and it's not fair when you bring other dogs in to just sort of send them into the pack and not like build that individual special bond with them. So we do a lot of separation. So we'll put the puppy away, we'll have the other dogs out doing their thing, and then when it's puppy time, we'll put the other dogs away, we'll isolate them, and we'll play with the puppy individually, which does not take a long time to tire them out because they're babies and they only have so much energy. And then we'll put them away, and then a little bit later we'll get them back out again, do something different, to just short little spurts many times throughout the day. It keeps the puppy really satisfied. They end up sleeping and being more well behaved in their crate because they've sort of exhausted some of their energy and they've used their brain a lot, which what a lot of people don't realize, that mental stimulation can actually be as equally tiring or sometimes more than physically exercising your dog, although it's not as good for their health, of course. Can be very helpful if you're trying to get your dog to be a bit calmer in the house, getting them to use their mind more. So we do like training sessions sometimes where we'll use food and we'll do training behaviors. Other times I might just play with a toy with the dog and do some retrieving or tugging or fun stuff like that. Or sometimes we just like have a little snuggle session on the couch, you know, just mix it up and do multiple small spurts a day, which works really well. That also works really well even if you don't have a puppy. So even if you have an older dog, it's a great way to spend time with them individually.
Yeah, I think really, I mean, an overarching idea is that you're picking attainable goals, whether it's your time or it's the progressions, like what your puppy can get to. And that's going to be really important as you pick these goals. And in just a minute, we're going to jump into the chat and we're going to talk about some of the goals that you might have with your dog this year. But having realistic expectations, but maintaining those expectations is going to be really important. If you pick, you know, a sit-stay skill, for example, starting out 25 feet away from your dog isn't that realistic. You know, you need to build up through a series of progressions. And I want you to not decide today or tonight that you're going to spend 2 hours every day training your dog. Pick something that you know you're not going to fail at, because that's one of the big things about any type of goal setting, is that if you have a day where you don't get to work towards your goal, or you have a setback, you feel like all is lost. But it's really, really important that you know that tomorrow is another day. You can get right back on the horse, so to speak, and continue that training, you know, continue working towards that goal. In agility, this is super important.
Oh, absolutely. This is actually something that next week we're going to be doing another live stream, but it's going to be on Tuesday rather than Thursday because Ken's working fire on Thursday. So we'll be doing a late night Tuesday agility focused live stream. And when I was trying to think of topics, this is sort of something that came up because we've had a lot of time off. Recently, we've been focusing more on family and like our house and like things like that. So this has been probably one of the biggest spans of like not training my dog in agility that I can remember in the longest time. So I'm going to be rusty. My dog's going to be rusty. So I thought like a good topic would be sort of like shaking the rust off or the dust off and you know, working on sort of revisiting some things. And I'm sure there's going to be some skills that are, you know, maybe not as good as they were before, but it's okay. It sort of gives me something to work on. I think it's also important to remember anything with dog training, whether it's agility or even if it's just basic everyday dog training stuff. The thing that's so cool about dogs is the more you train them, the better they get. So the more rewarding the training session is. Totally. So the more often you train, the dog starts to understand that behavior better, or they start to listen more reliably, or things start to happen. And then all of a sudden, those training sessions become more fun. And then they're easier to continue doing because it's not not like you're out having a frustrating training session all the time. As it starts to improve, that starts to enhance your ability to, or your desire to keep training. So you just kind of got to jump on the bandwagon and, give her a good go. And then you're going to see that it's actually really easy to start having a more consistent plan.
What's interesting about that is that the more you do it, it's a 10,000 hours theory. And the saying immediately pops into my mind: how do you eat an elephant? Like one bite at a time, or something like that, like something
It's
crazy.
a horrible analogy.
But these are like the big picture is you have a challenging goal that's going to take some work, but if you just pick away at it every single day, a couple of times a day, maybe it's a few times a week or whatever, you're slowly moving towards that goal, and you are going to get more efficient at it. If the more you're, do while your coffee's getting ready in the morning, you do those walking on a loose leash at your side, or you do your weights, or whatever the thing is, you're going to get better at understanding your dog. You're going to get better, hopefully, at your timing, really knowing when to reward your dog and when to come and replace your dog. All of these things, you're going to get better at it. So I think that's a really key thing to talk about. Now, let's jump into the chat.
I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really cool about dogs learning, and maybe some of you know this and maybe some of you don't, is when you're teaching a dog something new, often what will happen is, so if you have a training session and say you work on this one thing, this literally happened to me today, which is why I'm thinking about it. So I had to work today, but first time back in the office, like getting stuff in the longest time. So I went in a little bit early and I had like a half-hour training session with my youngest dog, Beeline, on the teeter-totter. And I haven't practiced the teeter-totter in probably a month. So I did a little training session for about a half hour, just little bits here and there. And she wasn't that great to begin with. And then towards the end, she was like really doing awesome. And then I went and worked for about 7 or 8 hours. And then before I went home, I thought, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to do like 5 more minutes on like the same thing that I did this morning and just sort of see. And she was so good. It was so rewarding because I did a little bit with her and then she had a little bit of a break. She had some time to sort of think about it a little bit. Yeah. And then we went back in. The scenario was so familiar to her that she was like, oh, I know exactly what you want me to do. And she just nailed it one after another. So like we both left the arena just with big smiles on our faces because we had a really good session. So that's another thing to remember about dog training as well. Sometimes if you're working on one particular thing, if you do a little bit and then sort of put it away for a little while and then go back at it again, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how the dogs start to transfer the learning from one session to the next. It's actually really cool.
And if you've seen our videos with Beeline in them, you know that she can smile. Like she literally will smile when she's
a happy girl.
Yeah, when she's getting tired. So I wanted to jump into the chat. Just want to say hello to George Contaval. He says watching from Kanab, Utah. I've got a few friends from Utah. So beautiful, beautiful state. George also says he wants to train myself and my cattle dog, and I think that's
nice.
It's really important to.
I'm glad he
mindset.
said myself.
Exactly. It's so important.
You're
to have
already
going
to be a good dog trainer, George.
For sure, because really a lot of the learning that you do when you're training a dog is figuring out them as well as figuring out yourself. How are you going to accomplish the behavior? What does your timing need to look like? How do you respond when they do something right? How do you respond when they do something wrong? Really knowing how to gauge those responses so that it's effective and impactful for your dog.
Dogs are only as good as their owners. There's so many people. It makes my heart sad when I hear people say things like, "Oh, my dog's so stubborn. He can't be trained. This dog can't do anything." And it's like, you're really writing your dog off, and there's it could not be further from the truth. Every single dog is capable of learning. You just have to figure out how to do it, and that's your job. And our job as dog trainers or dog owners is to figure out how does the mind of that dog work, and how do I need to deliver the information so that it makes sense to them and that they're excited to learn about that particular thing. Because once you motivate a dog to work and you figure out, what things sort of make them tick, then the training actually isn't that difficult. It's just like getting started. So it's absolutely about the owner, and that's great.
I don't know what it is about my brain tonight, but I'm thinking about another quote or
another
saying.
Elephant.
No, it's not an elephant, but I might need your help from the chat. And this might be Yoda that said this, but something to the effect of like, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So you're sort of going to fulfill whatever idea you have in your. But Yoda, if you think you can or you think you can, I'm sure he'd mix up the words a little bit. But you guys get it. Let me know if that was Yoda.
All of a sudden we lost a bunch of viewers.
Or the Star Wars fans are hopping on board.
I actually was going to say I didn't even know Yoda could talk.
Yeah.
I don't.
think
What
he
is he
sounds
from?
like
Star
that.
Wars?
Yes. Yeah.
See, I haven't watched Star
He
Wars.
kind of sounds like Grover.
We might lose more viewers by me saying that as well.
At least that's what I think. I think he sounds like Grover. So here's with a good question. I have a Shar Pei that has issues with vehicles driving by. How do I get her to ignore the cars, trucks,
That's
buses?
a pretty common issue, but
Yeah.
not so much for Shar Peis.
No.
Actually, that's I know that you probably don't like this behavior, but the fact that your Shar Pei is stimulated by motion kind of makes me excited because it probably means you have a pretty darn cool Shar Pei.
With tons of potential,
Yeah,
and motivation. So let's talk just for a
really
moment about how
cool.
we would deal with that, because we have dealt with that with some border collies.
Yeah, sometimes when you're dealing with behaviors where the dog, and so this can go for car chasing, this can go for many different behaviors as well. But when your dog is really focused on a behavior that's incredibly self-rewarding, so when your dog sees a car go by or they see it moving and they want to chase after it, and even if they lunge out at it and they don't even get to chase it, that particular behavior is really internally gratifying. So it's something that the dog will want to do over and over again. And even if you're, correcting the dog or redirecting the dog or trying to show them treats or whatever it is, some dogs are so high in that moment, so focused on that goal in mind that you could wave a steak in front of their face and it wouldn't really work. So there's basically two ways that you can go about it that will be a more effective route. Number one is try to control your environment. So, and this isn't always possible in this particular situation, but one of the successful methods that I've had in my own experience with border collies chasing cars is to teach the dog an alternative behavior when they see that particular item. So item, I don't know why I just called the car an item, but that object. So what I would start to do is teach the dog to lie down. And I don't necessarily know if a lie down would be a good solution for your Shar Pei. Maybe a sit would be better, but border collies just like to lie down. That's like a herding instinct, so I knew it was a good one to choose. So basically, every time a car would come close, I would tell the dog to lie down. I would allow the car to pass, and then I would either release the dog and just let them do their thing, or I might play a game of tug or do something that was exciting enough that I could get the focus back on me. But now keep in mind that the car is away and I'm not competing against the car in order to get the dog to play with me. And through several weeks of working through this, I had most of the dogs I did this with start to actually automatically lie down without me even asking when they saw a car. And the reason why I chose this method is not necessarily because I want my dog to lie down when they see a car, but if my dog ever got loose, I would want their instinct to kick in, that they've practiced this behavior so many times that when they get close to a car, they automatically lie down because it's more of a safety issue. So that was more of a way to sort of control. The other situation, so that's give the dog an alternate behavior to do instead of the one that you don't like. So that's method number one. Method number two would be to control the environment, which you can't always do, but you can certainly try. So you might need to walk on a less busy time. You might need to change your route. You might need to see a car coming and then choose to change directions or get way off the road and get further away. I understand that can't be something that you can do all the time, but you can't like all of a sudden, jump into the road and be like, excuse me, you can't drive here. My dog can't just, handle this distraction. Yeah. You have to change your environment yourself so that you lower it. Now, I'm not saying that you can never be around cars for the rest of your life. I'm saying if you're walking your dog and there's cars going past, you're at like a level 12 out of 10 on distractions, you're not going to be successful if you don't have good skills and training when you're working with that high of a distraction. What you need to do is take the distraction level down, focus on gaining better control when there's not much going on, and then slowly start to raise the distraction little bits at a time as you're still seeing success. But if you're going from 0 to 100 and then saying, I can't figure this out, you have to control the environment a little bit more. Now, I know, again, it's not super easy when it comes to cars, but there are certain ways around it, but those are the two routes that I would suggest. So control the environment so that you can focus on getting more success with your dog and then build in the distractions gradually. You want it to be difficult, obviously, because you got to, get that distraction and learn how to nail it, but you don't want to, set yourself up for complete failure. That's not good for you or the dog. And then the second thing, again, would be to try to replace the unwanted behavior with something that you would prefer the dog to do in that moment. So car and lie down, jumping on people, teaching them to sit instead. That's something we do in our classes. So those are a few different suggestions. Yeah, and hopefully if you don't have a problem with chasing cars, maybe you can take the information I just said and apply it to maybe a problem that you might be having that's different with your dog.
Yeah, it's using an incompatible behavior. I think it's really important. And there's one way to sort of, this is a bit of a hack, but there's one way to tip the scales in your favor more quickly. And that is when you're working on this exercise, pull out the high value rewards. If you make it really rewarding for your dog to not do that thing, if you're really struggling with whatever the skill is, whatever the thing is that you're like, oh, this is so frustrating, then choose a reward that is really valuable to your dog. You're not going to reward with kibble if your dog sits in beautifully at your side and a car drives by, if that's your problem. You're going to reward, you're going to use your voice, really support them, and you might reward them with something great. And save those great rewards for struggles that your dog has. The big wins. Like, this is really where you can start to differentiate a good response with a great one. It's how you're going to speed up that process to that off-leash situation, those off-leash behaviors, by really letting your dog know when that effort that they put in is the right one. It's so helpful.
We've said this in other streams, but we really recommend that you take a look and choose your dog's top 5 rewards and then rank them from like most favorite to not least favorite, but like the least favorite of those 5, so that when you're around like less distracting environments, or maybe you're working on a behavior that's relatively easy for your dog, maybe you go at like the level 1 item for your reward. And then as you start to work up the, totem pole to something that's more challenging, you want to bring the big guns out for that. Or I've used this technique in agility. If you have any agility trainers or handlers out there, sometimes if I'm trying to teach my dog to be able to have a bit more longevity in their working, and I want them to learn how to work longer or whatever it might be, often what I'll do, and I've done this a lot with my poodle, is I'll save her most favorite reward for like the end of the class, or like the third rotation.
That's a hack. Can you guys make note of this?
Or like the teeter-totter initially was like her scariest. I don't know why I'm bringing teeter-totters up tonight, but for her, that was like her scariest obstacle. So I left her most favorite reward for the teeter-totter. So she started to associate that. So those types of techniques can work incredibly well for training your dog. But, don't just pull out a treat because it looks good on the package. Like, literally investigate, what does your dog love? I could buy all the commercial treats in the world, but if I pull out a chicken wiener or a piece of block cheese
or tuna treats,
game over. They would take that 1,000 times over versus like a commercial treat from a bag. That's my dog's. But that's something that you should know. Or if I had like a piece of food and then I had a Frisbee, I have some dogs that would choose the Frisbee. They would care less about the food. So, but some dogs would be opposite. So think about that, because it will really, like, having a good reward can literally change your game in dog training. If you have something that they want, they'll be way more willing to work for you for it.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you talked about how it's not always, maybe it's not food. Maybe the number one thing for your dog isn't food.
I had an agility student once that literally we figured out some random time that her dog loved pine cones. It was a little Chihuahua. And then she started bringing a pine cone to class and competition, and the dog increased by like 5 seconds. Yeah. I'm not even kidding you. A pine cone. She just grabbed them off the ground. She's like, all the toys I spent, buying for these dogs, and it was a pine cone that did the trick. It's
crazy.
I'm like, whatever works.
I appreciate all the support for my Yoda impersonation.
And I'm sorry that I don't really know much about it.
I don't know that I do either. So let's jump into some of these New Year's goals.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. In Fraser, I'd like to take Ollie out to more public places and work on his generalizing in new places. I'm not very social, though, so I have to work on that. Well, I mean, that's a reasonable challenge for you as well, Eden. But I think it's
easier to be social when you have a dog with you, though.
Well, maybe that's what she wouldn't want.
Oh,
maybe she'd be uncomfortable with
that. Well, just put all the attention to the dog and not on you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, he's Ollie is so-and-so years old. But that's a really important one. And I love sort of the approach that Eden's taking, where she didn't say, I want to go out and socialize my dog. I want to go out so my dog likes people more. She knows that Ollie needs some space in public places. Yeah, she's really thinking along the right lines here in generalizing. generalizing, because dogs aren't good at generalizing. So you need to expose them to all sorts of various situations, various people.
They're very situational learners.
They are. So if socialization is one of your goals, then take Eden's advice and go out to more public places. And that doesn't mean like nose-to-nose greeting with other dogs. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. You never know what situation you're going to get into, but it's going out and being around these things. The smells, the sights, the sounds, all of these things are really good to build your dog's confidence and understanding of the world around them.
You know what? One of my favorite places to do this is stand in front of a bank that has like one of the bank machines like just inside the door.
Yeah.
Because people walk in and out of those banks all day long, and they're kind of usually in like a bit of a rush. So like they're not really going to like stop and talk to you, but it's a great opportunity to have people to like just, you know, walk by your dog. They're in and out, in and out. You can go further from the door, closer to the door, and then lots of people will stop and say, "Oh, hey, can I pet your dog?" And then you can work a little bit on that. But that's like a really good location, bank.
Yeah,
outside the bank.
Great idea. Crystal the Animal Lover says, mine is sledding and agility with my dog.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, I know.
Agility, of course, but I've always wanted to try sledding with my dogs. And I don't even know if my dogs would be any good at it, to be honest with you, but it looks so
we should
fun.
reach out to Jessica and see if she's got some stuff.
My sister, for my birthday one time, took me dog sledding in BC. And it was the most amazing experience. We went like through the mountains, and the dogs were so friendly. Yeah. It was so much fun. But I thought you just like rode and like relaxed. No, this is not the case, people. If you have never dog sledded with your dog, it is not your dog, but any dogs. It is an experience. I was so tired, but it was so fun. I loved it.
Those are cool pictures because there's a big smile on your face, and it almost
my
looks like
teeth were really cold.
Yeah, yeah.
From smiling.
Daryl PO 32007. Our goal is to hopefully get into beginner agility and starting grade 3 in January.
Oh,
yeah,
so
very
good.
Cool. I'm excited to see you in classes.
Is that a little Weimaraner I see in the picture?
Yeah. Oh, I think so.
Where did he go?
I know. I just removed it from the queue. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think I saved another one of his comments, so we'll go back to it. Nick Garber says, my Border Collie pup is 16 weeks old, but will eventually be a herding dog.
Oh,
my goals for this year is just solid obedience and great manners. Yeah, that's...
we have good people on this stream, man.
We do.
You guys have great ones.
We, I think some people would say that obedience can be a detriment to sheep herding. Not everybody, but you might hear this. It's sort of something that people will say. Hear this. But I will tell you that in my experience, having a dog who listens is remarkably helpful. Having a dog who lies down when you ask them to lie down, who
comes back when you tell them
that'll do.
So you don't lose them off in several fields chasing sheep. It is so
important. But Nick, if you you haven't seen some of our sheep herding videos on the channel, I have a whole bunch of sheep herding videos that you're going to love to check out if you haven't seen them already. Dan and Ellen Luton are moderators. They say...
Dan, every time I take a drink from this drink, I think of you because you always laugh at me drinking my bottle every time.
Dan says, I'd love to have a grade 2 graduate that can be ready to attempt and try dock diving. Yeah, awesome. For sure. Dock diving is a lot of fun. In that one video where we went to the local...
Canine
amusement park, the Canine Fun Zone with our dogs. Our dogs love dock diving, and you guys will like it too. I think
they're not like very good at it.
No,
like as far as like the depth of their jump.
It's just so easy
but
to.
They love it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Funky thinks the goal is to get into the water as fast as possible because she spends literally no time in the air.
Yeah. She
runs as fast as she can across the dock, and she's a pretty fast little dog. Yeah. And then it looks like a torpedo going into the water.
Yeah, and this is this is why I want you to watch our videos, to have the skills so that you can have your dog off leash. You can go try dock diving and
we take that
call
for
your
granted,
dog back. We really
Yeah.
do, and sometimes it's easy to forget it just because we work so hard on our dogs listening 100% of the time. So I want to give you the tools to be able to do these amazing things with your dogs. Try sheep herding, go out, do dock diving. Maybe it's just walk down the street and not have them pull you down the street so that you can have fun walking your dog. These are the reasons that
walk your dog to pick your kids up at the end of the day, being able to do that.
I love seeing some of these responses. Melissa Salt says, my goal with Stormy is to finish grade 3 and hopefully do some agility or fly ball. Yeah,
yes, come to agility.
Mm-hmm.
So
you'll
fun.
enjoy it. Okay, just gotta keep moving along the list here. George says, my 2-year-old cattle dog has a low growl with women. What guidance would you advise? So avoiding the situation at this point, I always feel uncomfortable giving any behavioral advice because there's a lot that goes into it. I know there's a lot of shoot from the hip answers.
It's hard to give the correct advice without seeing the dog ourselves because
responsibly, it's not a. I mean,
no, because this type of behavior can be a reaction caused by many different reasons. It could be lack of confidence. It could be aggression. It could be lots of different things. So it's sort of unfair, and the reason behind this behavior would severely affect the type of guidance we would give you in order to fix it. So the best thing to do is to try not to put the dog into a situation where they feel the necessity to react that way. And, you know, based on where you're located, I'm not really sure where you are, but you need to get out and find a good behaviorist nearby that has, you know, good dog training beliefs that you're in line with, and get some advice on how to deal with that, just to keep you and the dog safe.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's see what else people are saying. Oh, Becky Parker, one of our other moderators, she says, bettering all of Hap's obedience, trying a little fly ball and agility, and getting Hap on the paddleboard.
Yes, that's my goal for this summer too, Becky.
Becky says, too much? Absolutely not. So this is something that Kayl...
So fun!
I got Kayl a paddleboard for your birthday.
Yeah,
because we went out camping with the dogs, and she tried paddleboarding and fell in love with it. This is all she could talk about. I took pictures of her and the dogs on the paddleboard, and she was like, oh, can you show me that picture again? So I think those are reasonable expectations to have, and I think that is something that you'll really, really enjoy.
They need to have a good recall in the water.
Right.
Because they're not going to stay on the paddleboard the whole time, let me tell you from experience.
Yes, no, exactly.
And once they figure out that it's fun to jump off the paddleboard and spill you into the water, they tend to like to do that again and again.
Brenda Vell says, I'd like to train my German Shepherd that's 9 months old to walk on my feet, but it's challenging because I'm only 4'11".
That's cute.
That is a challenge for sure. We do have Teach Your Dog to Walk on Your Feet, and maybe that's how you arrived on the channel, Brenda. But I wonder if you could teach like a slight crouch.
Yeah.
Like maybe just a little bit of a crouch.
Or if you want to get really fancy, have the dog face you, put a paw on each foot, and then you walk backwards, and it walks forward facing you, and make it more advanced by teaching the dog to walk backwards first, which we have a video for that, of course.
Yep.
And then have him put his paws on your feet, and then you walk forward, so he actually has to walk backwards with his paws on your feet.
I love it.
My dog doesn't know either of those things. Now I want to teach that to my dog because it sounds kind of fun.
Yeah. I noticed Greg Folds, I know you'd asked a couple of times, do you recommend bark collars? And I know you mentioned the citronella collar for stopping barking. Information and training through these problems is 100% the best way and most surefire way to eliminate a lot of these problem behaviors. Now, I know some people do use citronella collars because they smell so
I actually
really
have
strong.
used one before, and it was quite effective. But what I will tell you is that my dog was extremely aware of when it was there and when it was not there. So the downside to it is that if you take the collar away and the dog doesn't feel this huge clunky thing on their neck, a lot of the dogs become really aware that if they bark, they're not going to get sprayed. So I wouldn't say that it's like the be all end all to go. I mean, the ultimate goal, the reason why I chose to use it is because I was teaching at the time and I didn't have the opportunity to have good timing and go back to my dog and address the issue like right then and there. So I had better experience fixing the barking issue that I was having by not putting the dog in the scenario where they could be close enough that they were barking out of excitement. So if it was like the summertime, I would leave my dog in the car. My car's
It's set up for
dogs, so I'm not leaving them in a car. Just
air conditioning, ventilation
fans. Or what I would do is I would come in and I'd put the dog in their crate and I would look like I was teaching, and then when the dog would bark, I would go back and address the barking individually that way, and so the dog was able to sort of generalize the situation between when I was fake teaching and actually teaching. It blended really nicely. So I'm not going to not say I don't like them because I did see some success, but the dog was really wise to it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good information.
And I think a lot of dogs are.
Crystal, the animal lover, says, my Border Collie mix is good at agility, and I'd love to do more with
Nice.
her. Yeah, for sure. And I saw Crystal had a live stream a couple of days ago, and she was showing off her dogs sort of making their way around her yard. And I know that would, I'm sure your Border Collie would love to do agility.
Cool.
For sure, Border Collie mix. Nick Harper mentioned jump on the bandwagon or the train.
I must have said bandwagon.
I like where your head is at, Nick. I had to include that one.
That's funny.
Morhan, I apologize for butchering your name. Next live stream, maybe an hour earlier. It's 1:44 in the middle of the night here in Norway. Would love to watch it all, but need to be up quite early. Well, thank you for joining us. We certainly appreciate from all the way across the pond joining us here. And I like this one. Poyok says, starting an intro to nose work class next week, and I can't wait to compete her in
That's
detection
becoming
work.
more and more popular.
Yeah, and you know what I really love about some of those exercises and skills and things that people do is that dogs of any age, dogs of any breed can do it. It's not super, you don't have to be physically invested. You don't need a super athletic dog to do something like scent discrimination. I did it with Deegan, my black lab, and this was a handful of years ago, and she loved it. And I really found it exciting when she'd get it. You know, she'd indicate on that whatever the thing was, the scent was.
Especially those types of breeds. It's just like when you take a herding dog to sheep herding and you see like what they naturally do. It's just so cool.
For sure.
And it's just like nose work. Like there's some, like lots of dogs can do it and be successful at it, but there's some dogs that are just really like bred to do that. And like, it's amazing to see how quickly they figure it out. No wonder they're used for so many like bomb detections, bed bug detections, all those types of things, because their ability to figure that stuff out is unbelievable.
Yeah, we have a couple of instructors that are really into scent discrimination.
One's
scent
actually
detection.
thinking about starting her own bed bug business.
Yeah. I'm going to jump on this one really quick. Becky Parker says, life jackets for the dogs or no? Easier to get them back onto the paddleboard?
Absolutely. I only own one doggy life paddleboard and life jacket. And when I was really bold and I went paddleboarding with 3 dogs at once, which I maybe was a bit crazy. So one of them was wearing a life jacket, but the other 2 I didn't have anymore. So I just put harnesses on them. And I'm so grateful that I did that because it was way easier to grab and then pull them back onto the paddleboard. But now that I have my own paddleboard, I'm probably going to invest in some proper life jackets for the dogs, just because if I'm out in a lake and something and the dogs get a little bit further away or like their legs get caught in seaweed or whatever it is, it's just like my dogs will swim really well, but I think it's just a nice thing for them to have. So a life jacket, or if you don't have one, try like make sure you have a really well fit collar so it's not going to slip over their head accidentally, or a harness is also a good option as well.
Yeah, and this may be one situation where you don't have your house line, long line leash on your dog.
Oh, that reminds me. The very first time, like when I went out for the first time with Hippie Shake, so we have a 6-pound toy poodle, and she went paddleboarding too. She's like super badass. She's awesome.
I don't think you can say that word.
You're not allowed to say that? Or are you being serious?
You just said it.
Okay. I put a little, these are like the one time that we like the flexi lines. We don't really love them. The retractable leashes. I put a retractable leash on her so that I could kind of zip her out and zip her in the water really easily, just to make sure she was okay. But she showed us very quickly that she could swim perfectly fine. So we let her off from there, but that's a good option to use in the water too.
Yeah, Daryl PO32007 mentions it is Vizsla, who's 9
Oh,
months
Vizsla.
old. Yeah.
Oh, I see now. This picture's so small on our thing.
It's hard to tell. We don't have the
it looks.
We don't have the YouTube display that you guys do. We're sort of so it's hard to see exactly.
It looks like a Weimaraner until you get close.
Mm-hmm. But I did see Daryl PO32007 mention that he wanted to take his dog riding off leash with his mountain bike or on his mountain bike.
Used to that all the time.
All the time, and I bet because Daryl's local, I bet we've ridden the same trails.
Yeah.
There's some really amazing trails south of 5, and like there's some amazing places to go with your dog that you will definitely enjoy. This is a good transition. So. Dan and Ellen Luton mentioned we would love to have Lucy off leash ready for the cottage this summer. Now let's talk a little bit about, and this might be something that a lot of people are thinking about. Like they'd love by the summertime to have their dog responding consistently, off leash, responding consistently at the cottage, outdoors. We need to talk a little bit about consistency in their training, as well as like small progressions that you might make with your dog outside.
Mm-hmm. So, if you're hoping to progress to off-leash control, what you need to be really careful about is that dogs are extremely leash-wise. So they're very aware when the leash is on versus the leash is off, especially if you happen to have a bad habit of training your dog with a tight leash or line very often. So if you're doing a lot of training and your leash is typically quite tight or your long line's tight and suspended from their collar, it is so obvious to them that they're on a leash because they feel that pulling on their neck all of the time, that those dogs typically have a really hard time transferring from on leash to off leash because the feel is so different, and the dogs automatically know they're off leash, and then they think that they can get away with baloney that they couldn't do when they're on the line. So that's the first thing, is to make sure when you're training that there's no pull to your line or your leash, and that there's always slack or it's, you know, draping right on the ground. From there though, what you want to try and do is make sure that you've gone several weeks with like 100% success in your dog's response to your commands. So, and if you can't remember the last time there was an issue, rather than going from, like, say you have a 20-foot line on your dog, for example, I wouldn't go from a 20-foot line and say, oh, my dog's been brilliant for 2 weeks, I'm going to take them off and, you know, I'm good to go. Again, dogs are way smarter than that. So we would suggest, you know, get a pair of scissors and cut, you know, 5 feet off the end of the line, and then go for another 2 weeks. And if you still haven't had any mishaps, cut another couple feet off the line, and then another couple feet off the line, and keep going until maybe you can transition to like having them drag like a 6-foot leash around outside and see how they do with that. And this is going to take some months, you know, for sure, depending on the dog. Like some dogs you can do it really quickly, some dogs it takes a little bit longer. It kind of depends on your relationship, but eventually what you can do is get down to like progressing to have like a little tab on your dog's leash. So if you need to get a hold of them, we never want you to be grabbing the dog's body or trying to grab their collar. That doesn't really bode well for your control or your status.
Yeah, it's also a really negative thing for the dog.
Super negative, and it makes you look like a litter mate.
Yeah, well, and now that you've gotten there, you've taken all the fun away and you've manhandled them. I mean, there's just so much conflicting information that you're giving your dog when it comes down to that point.
Yeah. So anyways, you can get to that point, and then usually when you get to that point, your off-leash control is usually going to be pretty great at that time. So, but that's a good way to transition rather than just going all the way on, all the way off. A smoother transition tends to be a little bit more effective for most, if not all, dogs.
Yeah. So this is such a vitally important thing to really understand as you're training your dog to work off leash. A couple of things Kayl mentioned that, and we talked at the top of the hour or top of the show about you having a journal and making notes. These are good. These are the things you'll want to be writing down in your journal. Things about the loose leash. Training your dog so that they have a loose leash allows you to get to this point where they can drag a leash, and then they can drag half of a leash, or they can drag the whole long line, because they're not accustomed to having tension on that leash all the time. This is how you're going to make those steps towards completely having your dog off leash and responding to verbal only.
I think that this goes for stationary exercise as well. I will see people say, oh, my dog can sit, or they can respond to their name. And then I look down and the dog's sitting, but the leash is completely tight. So the dog actually isn't doing any thinking for themselves. They're literally just responding to a tight leash. Or they'll call the dog's name and then they'll drag the dog towards them and then say, oh, look, my dog listens. And, you know, that's not a dog that's listening. That's a dog that's sort of being manhandled around like a puppet. And although you could live like that forever if you want to, but we don't want you to. We want you to strive for bigger goals so that you don't have to have the leash attached to them at all times in order for them to listen to you. So the goal is to have the leash on while you're training, because you need a backup and you need reliability, you need safety, you need control, all of those things. But we want you to keep the leash loose or slack while it's in your hand, and give the dog choices. Give them an ability to make the right choice or make the wrong choice. And that's what our dog training McCann method is all about. It's choice-based dog training, where we give the dog an opportunity to make a decision, and then whatever decision we make. Now, when we start, we kind of persuade them, if we can, to make the right decision over and over and over and over again until it becomes sort of what they want to do. once we get through that phase, we then start to add more proofing into it. So add distractions, add distance, add duration, all of those types of things. And then from there, you're going to start to see the dog make more mistakes. They either make the right choice or the wrong choice, and then we address it. If they make the wrong choice, we will then show them how to make the right choice. And if they make the right choice, obviously we reward with, a major abundance. And then the dog starts to figure out how to do the behavior, and B, have reliability when they do it. It's not just do it whenever you feel like it. It's do it when I ask you every single time.
Yeah.
And also love what you're doing at the same time so that they really enjoy what they're doing. So that's sort of the basis and quick Coles Notes version of what we call the McCann method, our way of doing things.
Yeah, and you hit one of the points that I wrote down as a note to talk about with you today, and that's keep your expectations high. As soon as you start to lower those expectations, or as soon as you start to just not worry about the fact that your dog doesn't come when they're called the first time you call, but they do come if you call 3 times, create some confusion, but it also your control starts to slide. And all of a sudden, you have a dog that isn't listening when on the response to name, or maybe they pull sometimes on the walk. All of these things sort of create this snowball effect. So in this journal, in this idea of using a training journal, write down, because I know, sometimes you got to head out to work and you need to take the dog out to use the go potty before you head back in, and something happens and they don't respond to name the first time, or they don't come when called, or whatever, even after a couple of months of responding 100% of the time. But now you feel like, geez, it didn't work. I don't have the time to fix that. But now's the opportunity to make a note. And now you can spend some time when you get home from work, or maybe the next day, working specifically on that skill. There are going to be things, it's not like you train your dog in 5 different skills, and they have great skills, and then you're done. They're just going to listen forever. You're going to encounter new situations, new scenarios, new things that they find challenging. And that's why we want to teach you how to give you the skills, how to train through these exercises, because there might come a situation where your dog, you're at a baseball park or something, and your dog loves the sound of the crack of the bat, or you're by the dog park and your dog loves seeing 10 dogs all in a super excited state. Hippie Shake is a good example. She is one high energy toy poodle, and a lot of dogs get really stimulated because of the noise she makes and how
like
fast.
A fast rabbit.
Right, and the noise she makes and how fast she's running. So we might need to work a little bit harder with a dog who is around Hippie Shake, getting them to respond to name, but we aren't going to allow them to not listen. We're going to maintain that same high level of expectation, because then our dog can rely on, they can depend on us. They can know that regardless of what they're thinking at that moment, that we have the expectation that they're going to respond to their name, that they're going to come when called. And that is what gives you the opportunity to take them off leash in these different environments, to go do the dock diving, because your dog's going to listen. So I really want you to take to heart the idea that you keep those expectations really high, and that you'll work through. If you encounter some scenario where your dog's not listening, you work through it. You train through it. If you can't train through it, you train through it tomorrow. But don't let it slide. So Betty Ann Major's got a great question here, or statement. My 9-month-old schnoodle knows when he doesn't have his gentle leader on, he'll pull like crazy on the leash. When the gentle leader's on, he's great. How long does he use gentle leader? He doesn't like it. So Kayl, do you want to speak to this for a second? And oftentimes the dogs that don't like the gentle leader, it's the best for them. It's the most effective training tool and piece of equipment that you can use. The thing that's really great about the gentle leader is that you can transition away from it. And there's a few steps to getting to that point. But do you want to talk for a minute about just transitioning away from the gentle leader?
Gentle leaders are one of my favorite tools to use in dog training. I absolutely love it. And the reason why I love it is it's extremely powerful, yet completely pain-free. So it doesn't hurt the dog in any way, but it's very powerful because of where it sits on the dog's head. So it deals with a pressure point at the back of the head, sort of the same area that their mother as a puppy would have grabbed them to discipline them. So the dog's very reactive to sort of that squeezing sensation behind their head. It deals strictly with pressure, no pain whatsoever. And a lot of dogs don't like it, not because it hurts or it's uncomfortable. It's not even uncomfortable for them to wear. They get used to it very quickly. What they don't like about it is the lack of power and control when they have on it. It's like power steering for a dog, basically. And the fact that the dogs can't really make their own choices anymore and self-reward as easily makes the dog not like the gentle leader very much. So, you know, it's not a reason to not use it. It's just that's why that happens. And just some dogs just need to learn to get over it. It is easy to transition off of, like Ken mentioned, but there's a couple things you need to think about. Number one is, what scenario are you choosing to take the gentle leader off in? And the company of gentle leader doesn't talk about this enough, like how to transition off. They basically just tell you how to put it on and then they leave it at that. But as dog trainers, we've had a lot of experience being able to wean off of the gentle leader, and there's a great sort of middle mode that you can use with the gentle leader. So basically what you'll do is keep the neck piece in place on the dog and keep it snug so it's not slipping and sliding all around, so you can just fit 2 fingers between their neck and the strap. It should fit very snugly. And then slip the nose piece off, pull it through, and then attach the leash where the leash is attached to the bottom. Clip that to the little D-ring underneath their chin. So you're going to still have the neck strap off, but the nose loop will be removed. But what you don't want to do is have the leash still attached to the extended neck loop. You will not have the control that you're looking for. That leash must be connected to the D-ring underneath the chin. And that particular setting will give you the benefit of that neck strap, but taking away the nose strap. And back to my first point is a mistake I see a lot of people make is they say, okay, I'm going to try weaning off the gentle leader, so I'm going to try walking to the park today without my gentle leader on. Well, back to like what I said earlier in the live stream, that's you taking a behavior and slamming it with a level 10 distraction, like right off the bat. You're not going to be successful. So if you want to wean off the gentle leader, you need to choose to use it and do that in an environment that's not as distracting as like going outside for a walk. And maybe you're not doing this, but I'm just giving you an example. And B, use it in a scenario where you're going to be able to get a little bit more success so that you're getting good things on both sides. And then from there, either change your environment and make it a little bit more distracting, or choose to use your gentle leader in only some scenarios. So I have a gentle leader for Beeline. She's 2 years old, and I only use it now in situations where I don't feel like working my butt off and I just don't feel like battling with her. So one of those places is when I'm at an agility competition. And for those of you who don't know what agility competition is, I compete in very high level of agility, and I go to large competitions that may have minimum 1,000 dogs on a property. There is distractions and everywhere, and she knows exactly where she is and exactly what she's going to do. So she is buzzed off her face. She is so overjoyed with excitement that, you know, and I want her to be that way. I want her to be excited about the game. So I don't want to be disciplining her and being negative with her, trying to get her to listen to me. I don't want to be doing that in that moment. So I choose to put the gentle leader on, which she doesn't love either, but oh well. I put it on and we can walk to the ring very calmly, very positively.
And it isn't a battle.
No, it's not a battle. I literally can walk her with holding.
It's not a basil.
It's not a basil. I can walk her with like my thumb and finger, and we go to the thing, and it's awesome. But I could also probably take her off leash in those situations, and she wouldn't leave me ever. She's really well trained. So you have to just decide, like, what do you want in that moment, and then you can walk them on the gentle leader for their entire life if you want to. There's no reason to wean off of it. But if that's your goal, you need to be smart about how you do it. Don't set yourself up for failure. Think about how you can control it and do it more gradually and gracefully.
Yeah, and I know Melissa asked a question about transitioning off of the gentle leader in grade 3.
Yes, we do talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. But if you can find those exercises where your dog is already reliable, and oftentimes the stationary ones are a good time to use it.
That was the point I was going to make. Thank you for
so like using the stay command, for example, you've trained your dog to stay, from 2, 4, 6 feet away for a minute or 3 or whatever the thing is. that might be a great opportunity
Yeah,
because you know
stationary
your dog
exercises are always easier.
Yeah, well, you know your dog's really strong. They have a clear understanding of what's expected of them. So that's a great time to slip that nose loop off the gentle leader and double clip it to the collar. You know, those are the exercises where your dog isn't struggling, you know, isn't, you know, really knows what you want from them. Great time to start transitioning away from that gentle leader.
And remember that with any training equipment, there isn't a set time that you would use it and then, you know, should be able to wean off of it.
Right.
Every single dog is different. It has all kinds of, you know, it has everything to do with the type of personality that you are, the type of personality your dog is. What is the relationship between you and the dog? How much does the dog respect you already? How much is the dog focused on you? How much are you training? What kind of trainer are you? Blah, blah, blah. There's so many variabilities that will have this process go faster or slower. And there's lots of different training equipment out there. We have countless videos on our channel about different options that we like to use in our training methods. I saw somebody ask about a prong collar. We are not advocates of prong collars. We don't use them in our training.
They're hard to transition away from.
Yeah,
like,
there's just other options that we feel that are, you know, capable of being
for
used.
obedience training, for sure.
So that's sort of the gist of that. There's lots of options, and you need to just figure out what's the right fit for you and your dog. And with dog training, it's, you know, you can't put yourself into a box with dog training. You have to always think outside the box. We're constantly learning about dogs and about dog training and changing things. And that's one of the things I love most about us and our staff and our family business and our program is we're always learning. We're always thinking about, you know, we have meetings every single Wednesday. So myself and all of, you know, our head instructors and our, you know, full-time staff, we talk about every class and almost every student and problem solve and put our heads together and think about, okay, you know, we've seen this problem countless times. You know, we could suggest this, or we'll bring somebody to the table and say, like, guys, I saw this happen. Like, you know, have you ever seen this before? What can we do? So we're always thinking of ways that we can sort of problem solve. And I think growth is really, really important when it comes to dog training, and also choosing a dog trainer. If you're trying to look for a dog trainer yourself to sort of learn, you need to choose people that are constantly learning and growing and that aren't just stuck in like one way. Now, we have a method that we believe wholeheartedly in, but we're absolutely okay with like improving it all the time.
Yeah, well, and that's the goal. I mean, that's the real advantage of having 500 dogs every week come into the training facilities, that we get all these new
learn something
experiences
every week.
Yeah, and that we can,
like
you
never
know,
ending.
it reinforces for us that these, whatever this, you know, working this skill, how to deliver the information best.
It's easy to see what works and what doesn't.
To the dog, for sure. Now, I wanted to jump back in the chat. Nick Garber has hit a home run tonight when it comes to asking good questions. And I love this one. And I know Nick tried to ask it earlier, but had a typo or something. So I love this one, and Kayl's going to really enjoy this, I'm sure. So, so what do you do if you're, I lost it. So what do you do if you're in an environment and you can't control and your dog doesn't respond to name or recall because there's a distraction that is too much for them, like another dog? And this is such a simple answer, but it's so simple that you're like, oh, okay, that makes total sense. I'm sort of setting it up. You want to knock this one out of the park here, Kayl?
Well, I was going to say, how about you don't go in that environment?
Exactly. It's so true. If your dog's not, you need to know before you put your dog in that situation, whether it is a stimulating environment or a, you know, another, maybe people, they get stimulated by people or sounds or whatever.
If you're questioning your ability in any situation to call your dog back the first time, every time, you're not ready to step into that scenario.
100%. You never want to put your dog in a position where they're likely to fail or that they could fail. So we will test our dogs. You know, we'll do recalls. For example, we do 8 weeks of recalls. We start to introduce greater and greater challenges for the dogs, but we know that we have a solid foundation of success. We know that they're very successful with a short step back. So if we introduce like a food as a distraction, our students are prepared to work through. They have all of the tools they need to work through that. Their dog is on a long line so that they can ensure success. And we don't overface our dogs. It's something that people, and we've talked about it a little bit over the time in this live stream, but it's something that people often do is they think they just have a misunderstanding about what an appropriate progression is. What's an appropriate step? Where do I go from here?
Or people just have too low of expectations and they're okay with catching the dog and just trying to get the dog back that way. And they don't see like all of the other things that are quickly unraveling when you put yourself in and your dog in that type of scenario. Because people don't like to do things that are hard work, but everybody knows that when you do put hard work in on something, the results that you get are way better. So, and the advice that we're giving you today about like, okay, if this is, you're at a dog park, for example, wherever this particular situation is happening, we're not saying that you can never go to a dog park ever again in your life.
Right.
We're saying that right now, that's not a good place to be testing your skills if you're not getting good success. You need to take a step back and you need to change the scenario so that you're getting a little bit more reliability and then test it from there. We have a really unique opportunity with Ken and I because we have multiple dogs. And so when we raise a new puppy, Ken and I go on what we call prop walks. You may have seen us reference that. You
may have seen them on the channel.
Yeah. And so we have a prop walk. So my family owns, 22 acres, beautiful, flat, open fields. And we walk our dogs there 90% of the time because there's no other dogs and people, and there's nothing that the dogs can run into. Like, it's fabulous. So when we take our young dogs out there and we are teaching them how to prop walk with the pack, typically what I'll do is I'll take the puppy on a long line and I will take my most boring dogs, the dogs that aren't interested in playing. They just sort of sniff and, mosey along so that the puppy isn't being too distracted by them. And I'll practice having a recall, calling the pup back to me, playing, rewarding them, making it really, really fun. And I'll do that for several weeks until that puppy is actually running back without even being called in anticipation of reward and play and fun. And then what I'll start to do is integrate a few more dogs into the pack for the walk, maybe a few more stimulating dogs, and then make sure that that pup is still listening each and every time that I call them. And then eventually I work into being able to take all the dogs at the same time. Our young dogs are walking around the property with us at quite a young age, like I would say like 7-8 months. Yep. They're wearing a long line while they're doing it, but already at that time, they'll leave the pack of dogs and they'll run back to us when we call them. But it's because we condition them from the beginning that is a super, super rewarding place to be. Yep. It's all about us. It's not so much about the other dogs. They love the other dogs. They love to play. They think that's great. But when it comes choosing between them and us, they're more than happy to choose us because we train them to be that way. But we do it strategically with walking them individually and then adding 1 dog and then 2 dogs and then 3 dogs. And then we just work our way up, and you end up getting a dog that can enjoy themselves and run off leash and have a wonderful time, but you still have control at the same time.
You've heard me mention this before, but dogs will do what's rewarding. So
repetitively, over and over
whether
again.
You're there to give them the right information or you're not, or they're being rewarded by jumping up on somebody, or they're being rewarded by playing with another dog, which is a very rewarding thing for a dog to do.
One of the most rewarding things.
They will do that thing. So from the beginning, set them up so that you're the most rewarding thing. If your dog doesn't respond to name, or you're unsure if they're going to respond to name, you're going to have them on a leash so that you can redirect them, bring them back, and that they can engage with the youth so that you can be more rewarding than that distraction that's 25 feet away or whatever distance you need to be successful. But it's so important that we really focus on, making our dog successful. We want to build all of these behaviors on a foundation of success. We're building a house on a solid foundation of reward, of good information, of consistency. Very, very important with any of these things that we're talking about today with dog training.
Edith and Crystal, I'm just reading your comments here. Thank you so much. You guys are saying such lovely things. Yeah. Eden says you guys are incredible, and I find these live streams plus all your videos so helpful. Thanks so much. I'm currently learning as much as I can about dog training. That's awesome.
Good. Very cool. Mm-hmm. I see Lindy Smith up a little bit.
Yep. Oop.
So Lindy Smith says, hi, is a gentle leader ideal to train on a high energy dog like a pit bull?
Totally.
So for sure it could be, but it's, I hate using definitives in dog training. Like there are very few things that I specifically say, absolutely use this piece of equipment or use this reward or use this thing with your dog. We have experience using gentle leaders on pit bulls.
Yep.
And it is a very effective tool.
Totally.
But the tool's only as good as the operator. So, really know that you're maintaining a loose leash, that you're rewarding with good timing, that you're redirecting away from distractions. The list goes on and on. We have so many videos on the channel, Lindy, that you're going to find really helpful. But don't just think that you're going to put the gentle leader on and the dog's going to just be good.
There's a bit of work to it, but it is great. Gentle leader, like to sort of generalize it, I find that it's really good for dogs that are high energy, that do a lot of pulling, that maybe do a lot of sniffing, because what happens is because your leash is now attached to the head rather than the neck or like a back, like a harness, which is the most useless thing. You can turn the dog with so much more ease and flexibility. Can you imagine trying to lead a horse around with like something wrapped around its belly or its neck? Like it just wouldn't work. I recognize that they're two different weights of animals, but leading them around by the head is just a lot more easy because you end up having to use a much less force because it's just works a little bit more easily. So, I would suspect that it will probably be a great choice for you. But, if you don't have a pit bull and you have a different type of dog that's really high energy, it would be a tool that I would investigate into learning. But again, like Ken said, it's really important, you can't just slap a piece of equipment on your dog and think that it's magically going to work. Regardless of the type of equipment that you use, there's so many other things that go into dog training besides the equipment. It's your timing, and I keep saying this, but it's your relationship with your dog. There are some dogs that I see in classes that do not even realize that there is a human being hanging onto the end of the leash because there's no connection between the two at first. And that can be almost impossible to train a dog if there's no connection between you and the dog. So that's the goal, and you're going to achieve that connection by doing training and doing things with your dog, and
not just training.
Yeah, spending quality time enhancing your relationship. Yeah. I keep sort of referencing the same thing, but Ken and I work really hard because we have lots of dogs. So, sometimes if we're going somewhere, we'll take one dog with us. It's like, well, often we literally, guys, we have a schedule on our fridge. You're going to think we are the craziest dog people right now, but I'm going to tell you anyways. We have a schedule on our fridge of a rotation of our dogs and when it's their time to like get their alone time in our house.
Yeah, because we think it's just like a kid.
That's how crazy we are, but that's how important we feel it is to give the dogs that individual time. I mean, our dogs live in a pack, they're together all the time, and we have some dogs that are like the boss, and like Funky Monkey literally would be on my lap 100% of the time, and the other dogs would never get a chance because she would be hogging my affection all of the time. So we rotate them. We don't have 7 dogs running loose around our house. Lots of people do that, and maybe they like that. That's not our style of living. We don't like that. But our dogs get rotated through. They live in basically a kingdom. Otherwise, this entire basement is completely decked out for the dogs. They're spoiled rotten. Funky's laying upside down on a dog bed back there. But that's sort of what we do with our dogs because we think that individual connection with them is so important.
For sure. And getting back to a note that I'd made and we almost overlooked, but building relationship can be like a difficult thing to understand. But knowing your dog's capabilities, knowing what they're good at, what they're bad at, what they might need work at, having them know what your expectations are, having them know what their responsibilities are, that you are always going to, be a bringer of value, that you're worth listening to. All of those things can be achieved certainly through training, obedience training, the skills, also things like brain games, teaching tricks. Trick training is a really great way to build that relationship.
At the same time.
Yeah. 1, 2,
no,
3.
not
tricks.
No, I didn't say we should train. I said we did say tricks at the same time.
Okay, well now we're gonna have to say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Tricks.
You're so weird.
But using those things to your advantage and really, showing your dog that working with you, doing as you ask is a really gratifying and valuable thing. I've actually posted a card somewhere above me that you can check out. But we had so many amazing questions in the stream today. We went in
so many awesome goals for this year.
For sure. I love it. Yeah. And I want you guys, this stream will disappear after 24 hours, but I want you to keep us posted. Are you, in our next video, maybe our Monday night's video, are you making progress with those goals? Because you know, we can talk about all the dog training in the world. We can give you all of the information you need. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to take action? That's really what this comes down to. Now, I want to mention, if this is your first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We publish new videos every single week to help you to have a well-behaved four-legged family member. I want to thank you guys for joining us. I want to thank our moderators as well today, Becky and Dan. They were super, super helpful, and it would be tough to do this without
Dan,
them.
I am reading every single one of your posts. Every time you've seen me smile, like while he's been talking, it's because I've been reading one of your posts, and you're so funny.
Yeah, and very really helpful. Thanks for dropping all the links for all of our viewers. So with that said, I want to wish you guys.
And if you're a night hawk, make sure you come in.
Yeah,
hang out with
next
us
Tuesday
on
night.
Tuesday
night. It's going to be awesome. Yeah,
me and
I'm really excited about it.
Beeline are going to do some agility for you.
For sure. On that note, I'm Ken.
I'm Kayl.
Happy training, guys. Thanks for joining us at the train station.
Happy New Year. Happy training.